Yeah, welcome in. Welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast. Got a pretty interesting show for you here today. I'm going to talk some college football. Normally, we wait till after the weekend and we talk that with my main man, Ryan Langford, the Format Podcast official college football analyst. But just wanted to hop on today and talk a little bit about it. And if you're anxious to hear Ryan and my conversation, that'll probably be out next Wednesday or Thursday. So I'm just gonna jump on real quick and give my thoughts on last night's Pac-12 championship, the last one ever as it's currently constructed. But we'll get to that. If you're here on YouTube and you haven't already, please go ahead, click that subscribe, that like, and that notification bell. If you want the audio-only version of the podcast, please open up your audio podcast platform, hit the search bar, type in the Format Podcast. We should come right up. You can subscribe right there. And if you're enjoying the content, please give us a like and leave us a comment. Also, that 5-star review. All that stuff helps us rise in the algorithm, helps us find more sports fans, helps more sports fans find us. Let's get right to it. Okay, so we know that this weekend is the final weekend of the regular season. Well, I guess last weekend was the final weekend of the regular season, but this is championship weekend, so conference championships, and we are going to find out everything we need, or the committee is going to find out everything they need, the committee being the College Football Playoff Committee, to make their decisions on who will be the final 4 teams playing for a national championship in the College Football Playoff. And quick note, this season is the final season that the College Football Playoff will be only 4 teams. Next year, they're moving to the 12-team format. So I'll have some thoughts on that in just a minute. But last night, one of the teams made it easy on the committee, and that's number 3 Washington, continuing their perfect season, finishing 13-0 on the year and defeating the Oregon Ducks in their rematch in the Pac-12 championship. Now, the ESPN predictor, I think I mentioned this with Ryan last week, the ESPN predictor had 74% in favor of the Oregon Ducks. And I think a lot of that had to do with the way Oregon kind of finished the season, the regular season, that is, following their loss about a month and a half ago to Washington. Another 3-point loss, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, Oregon's been blowing everybody out, just going hard, playing incredible defense, not allowing a 100-yard rusher, putting up tons of points. Bo Nix having himself purely in the Heisman conversation. That's quarterback Bo Nix, who will probably be in New York for the as a Heisman finalist. And meanwhile, Michael Penix Jr., who started the season on fire along with the Washington Huskies offense, he has, even though he's had a tremendous year, his numbers have gone down in each month of the season, September and then October and then November. And obviously we're in December, but he saved some of his best for last. Penix going 27 for 39 last night for 319 yards, 8.2 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown, 1 interception with a QBR of 87.8. And he came up big when his team needed him most, and he led his team to that win. As I mentioned earlier, they're 13-0 on the season now. They are the Pac-12 champions. And quick note, this was kind of, I guess, a fitting end to the Pac-12 as we know it. I'm sure, being that there's so much money out on the West Coast and there's so many good players, that eventually the Pac-12 will revive itself in some form or fashion. But as of right now, I believe there's only 2 teams remaining in the conference, and that is Oregon State and Washington State. So we'll see what happens to them going forward. Obviously, Oregon, Washington, UCLA, and USC, they hitch their wagon to the Big Ten, and they'll be playing there next season. So a lot of tradition is now literally history in the Pac-12. All those great USC teams and Washington teams and Colorado teams of the past, et cetera, all that is done. You will see, I want to say, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah all heading to the Big 12 next year. So that was that. But that's a show for another time. Regardless, Penix, like I said, came up big last night. Jalen McMillan and Roman Dunze, 2 of his biggest targets, also came up big last night. Roman Dunze, 8 catches for 102 yards. Jalen McMillan, 9 catches for 131 yards. But the unsung hero in this game to me was running back Dylan Johnson with 28 carries, 152 yards. And I believe that was either the first or second time all year that Oregon has allowed a back to rush for 100 yards against them. So Oregon really was one of the top 10 defensive teams in the country, one of the top 10 teams in the college football playoff ranking overall this season. And well, stopping the run, we always talk about it, right? Run the ball, stop the run. That was something that they had really hung their hats on all season long, but they weren't particularly able to do that last night. And that was kind of a surprise. Washington ran overall for 37 carries and 157 yards. Meanwhile, Oregon ran for 20 carries and 124 yards, which is well off of what you would have expected from them. Oddly enough, Bo Nix led with 69 rushing yards for the Ducks. Now, Oregon is going to be a really good team going forward. They just extended Dan Lanning, so he's happy there. Not to say that he can never leave. Obviously, if another situation he really likes comes up, then he can move on. And if that team is willing to pay the buyout, then so be it. But Dan Lanning is really building a powerhouse there in terms of a team that can run the ball and stop the run and has a lot of NFL bodies on it, really in the kind of SEC build. But it's interesting. I guess they just didn't have enough firepower, oddly being one of the top 10 scoring teams, I think a top 5 scoring team in the country all year long, but they didn't have enough firepower to keep up with another really elite offense or a team that had, really good offensive line play that could kind of slow up their pass rush. A team that, while it wasn't a great rushing team all year, clearly demonstrated when it got more important, the ability to run the football. As I mentioned, Dylan Johnson, 28 carries, 152 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 5.4 yards per carry last night. So really great workmanlike effort from that guy against a team that really took a lot of pride in stopping the run. And what kind of got to me, though, besides the breakdown of this game itself, is that with Washington being 13-0 now, an undefeated Pac-12 champion, and the Pac-12 being arguably the best conference in college football this year, they just made one spot easier for the college football playoff committee. So I think we can be relatively sure that Washington is in, and we are going to have something really serious here, because now you're in a situation where Texas appears to be cruising to a win in the Big 12 championship game. Right now, they're up 41-29 against Oklahoma State. And, I think it's pretty safe to say that that game is, nope, it's over. It's 21-49. Texas is 12-1, your Big 12 champion. And, like I talked about with Ryan, here's the thing. Remember, they beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa. So now what happens if Alabama ends up winning the SEC championship? I think, I wonder where Steve Sarkisian and his Texas Longhorns are on that, because are you rooting for Alabama? Because if Alabama wins, then you say, okay, we have a win on the road against the one-loss SEC champions, and that would be huge for Texas in terms of what they've been able to do. That's a huge feather in their cap. Obviously, one loss in their rivalry game at a neutral site, but winning their conference and then again beating the one-loss SEC champion on the road. Or do you say, okay, if Georgia wins, then we know Alabama with 2 losses is out, and that clears the way for Texas to get in, especially now that Oregon, who many thought was the best one-loss team in the country, is now gone. They have to drop out of any contention with the second loss, because obviously they lost last night. So what is Texas rooting for in this situation? Because I've been listening to a ton of college football analyst stuff all week and reading it, and a lot of people feel like the SEC is going to get one team in, but based on what we've seen before, I truly believe that as long as Georgia doesn't get blown out, the committee is going to see them as one of the 4 best teams in the country, and they are going to end up putting both SEC teams in, because they're not going to keep out a one-loss SEC champion, and they're not going to keep out the team that is the 2-time defending national champion and just got a 28-game win streak snapped. So at that point, I'm wondering, does Texas get screwed here, right? Because you still have, what happens if Florida State goes undefeated, beats Louisville tonight, and they're 13-0 as an ACC champion? A 13-0 Power 5 champion getting left out? That doesn't make sense. Michigan is the prohibitive favorite against Iowa tonight, and they most likely will win. They're number 2 in the country in the college football playoff ranking. If they win, they're not getting kept out. So then what happens? Does Texas get jerked on this? I really don't know. And chaos is what we want to see if you're a college football fan here, because you want and I talked about this with Ryan, again, you want for the college football playoff to be put in a situation where they have to make tough decisions. And really, what I want is not only for them to make the tough decisions, but for them to have to get in front of the microphone and justify how they came about making said tough decisions. But this is the one thing I thought about. I thought about this. I said, if we have bad decisions, let's say it ends up being Michigan, Washington, not in this order, but Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, and Washington, right? So you have the two SEC teams that's providing. Alabama wins the SEC championship today. What happens now if you're in a situation like that and then people are in an uproar? Guess what the committee does? The committee looks at you and the committee says, listen, this was a tough year. It shook out how it shook out, but guess what? Now you can't complain. Next season, you have the 12-game playoff. That's what we're going to hear either from the committee or from the college football media. Well, now you have the 12-game playoff next year, and this is not going to happen. But it's still going to happen because why? We know it's going to happen. In a 12-game playoff, you're going to see the SEC trying to push to get as many of their teams in as possible to, elevate their opportunity for their conference to win a national championship. So we're going to see, but congrats to Washington. Michael Penix Jr., you're likely going to be a Heisman finalist. In my opinion, you should win the Heisman. A great season from Oregon. Dan Lanning, you've still got some work to do, but you built a heck of a program there in terms of kind of changing the calculus of how Oregon is built physically and how they play football, even though they've been a very good team for maybe the last 10, 12 years now. But still got some work to do. So they will likely be a New Year's Six team. So that's going to be an interesting matchup, whoever they end up taking on. But yeah, so I guess we see now what happens with Florida State if they go undefeated. Obviously, I think it's pretty fair to assume Michigan is going to beat Iowa. Iowa can't score enough points to beat them. And then we've got the Texas and the Alabama-Georgia mess. So what I want to know from you, who do you think should be the top four in the playoff? And do you think if Alabama beats Georgia, should two SEC teams get in? And if Alabama gets in, should Texas get in by virtue of having beaten them on the road? Give me your thoughts in the comment section. Can't wait to hear them. I'll get back with you next time, and I'm out. Peace.